Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me? It's working? Great. Hello. It's so nice to see some friendly faces in the crowd from the past 2 days. So, my name is Naama. I come from SAP in Israel, and I will be talking about hacking cloud culture. Yeah, just go ahead. We're just starting. Um, Wait, I have to put on my clock so I can actually see when it's working. One moment. Do you guys know time timer? Never leave home without it. Okay. This is another trick of agile coaches. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about cloud culture. A little bit about myself. I come, as I said, from SAP. SAP is a global company, around 84,000 employees. I double-checked this morning. We provide solutions for businesses to run their business. Our motto is help the world run better. So all over business solutions such as HR, supply chain, finance, and so on, through enterprise till small business, okay, entire work span. And specifically for me, I've been working in SAP for the past 9 years, being implementing Agile and Lean for about 9 years. And my story starts, well, the longest story starts on our Agile implementation, but I will be focusing on work we've been doing in our current product, which is called SAP Web IDE. It's an IDE to develop SAP applications and services. And it's a cloud-based, mostly cloud-based. We have also an on-premise solution, but it's mostly cloud-based product. And we've been working on that product for the past 2 years. We've set up an internal organization about a couple of years ago, made out of different organizations. So we actually had 3 different cultures that were merged together, and we created a new culture. So I want to share with you our journey through that. So I just cut off a bit of slides because we have seen and heard on the Agile Manifesto so much yesterday and today. So I said, okay, you guys know the Agile Manifesto, and you know Scrum, and you mostly know Kanban. So when we started working back in 2008 on Agile practices, then it was like inconceivable. How can we possibly deliver something every month, potentially shippable? Okay, but what I see today is that we are, first of all, we have matured. If you're doing the same Agile you've been doing a few years back, then you're not adapting. Okay, you need to inspect and adapt. So there is no by-the-book Agile. By the way, if you look at the Scrum Guide, it's very vague around some stuff. I think it's intentional. Okay, so you need to constantly make sure that these Agile practices are actually right for your own context. The second thing is that today, when we deliver to the cloud, what does a 4-week or even a 2-week sprints mean? It's not potentially shippable. If I'm expected to continuously deliver, then what does a sprint stand for? Okay, so I will show what we translated it into. So if I look at the 2017 challenges we are facing is, first of all, that we are at process maturity. Okay, Agile is a fact for us. SAP has moved to Agile starting 2009. Most of the development organizations are working in some sort of Agile. Okay, and the mindset has already also shifted in many places. The second thing is we're scaled. Okay, my organization was born scaled. We were born 10 teams. Okay, it's not like one team that grew into becoming a 10-team group. We are about 120 people in my group. We were born at scale, and that also requires some specific solutions. And as you saw in just the previous presentation before me, that the scaling frameworks is not always relevant for your own context. So you really need to make sure that you know how to scale that. The other thing is that if you were in Gil's presentation yesterday, DevOps is a game changer. Okay, there are so many things that Agile teams are required to do today that weren't there 4, 5, 7 years ago. Okay, so we really need to adapt, and it also, all of these things require a change in the mindset of people. They need to know what they need to do, and they need to know how to do that. And continuous everything. So we have continuous integration, which is honestly not very new. We had that also a while back, But today, continuous delivery and continuous deployment gives us a lot of different challenges, okay? And we need to make sure that we are equipped to handle that. So what I see is that now in our organization, as a management team member, I see that we have a new team member we would like to create. And that team member needs skills. I'm calling it a team member and not a developer or a quality, and because I don't want to get into who is that team member. But what we would like him or her to have, is first they need to know the big picture, because when you're in cloud, you really, also in Agile generally, but in cloud specifically, you need to know your feature. What is your feature used for? Who is using your feature? Is it being used? Okay, you need to know the bigger picture of what you're part of. The second thing is that you need to have ownership. So if you know the Amazon slogan, you build it, you own it, you run it. Okay, so if you build something and you own it and you run it, and if there are bugs, you need to own it. Okay, it's not like back in the waterfall days when you had development that move it to quality, that move it to whatever. So today, when you have also DevOps within, then you need to really own your code all the way through. And then we have DevOps. I just said that. Okay. Additional, but DevOps also requires some additional packaging, releasing, all kind of new activities that Gil said so much about yesterday, so I'm not going to repeat some of that. But also for handling all that, we really need hard automation skills. People need to automate a lot, okay? And it's not something that was very common a few years back. And last but not least, they actually have to develop something. But when they do that, we actually require them to do it on full stack. So it's not enough to be a UI developer. You need also to know server side. Okay, so we are requiring our teams and team members to have all that. Where is our part as management? How do we enable that? Because culture is not about changing the people. It's about changing the system so the people will be able to adapt to it. Because people don't like to be changed. But it's not like they don't like changes, they don't like to be changed. Okay, so we need to make sure that our system is relevant and in context for these people before we can come and say, hey, you guys, you need to do this and that differently. So we've been talking a lot about culture in the past days. I just want to give you a really, really analogic example, really small one. So what is culture? Culture is everywhere. My husband, he's in the hardware industry, and he used to work in this company 10 years ago, and he left. He didn't really like working there. And when he had a chance a few months ago, he went back to work there as a consultant. And he told me, you know, it's amazing. I forgot how it was there. You go into a meeting room, and you have a meeting scheduled. Everybody's late. And when they arrive there, instead of a 1-hour meeting, you have a 2-hour meeting, and you still don't have any conclusion or action items. And then they say, you know what? Let's just reschedule for next week to continue discussions. And he says, well, it's been 10 years. Most of the people have been in the company now only 2 or 3 years. So they weren't there 10 years ago, but the culture is still there. That's amazing, because this is company DNA, okay? My point is, culture is something you need to drive, even if it's just like a silly thing like meetings, okay? Nonetheless, agile transformation or agile mindset, okay? So just to make sure we're aligned, because when I tried to Google cloud culture, actually I couldn't really find a definition for it. Usually you have DevOps culture, but I like to call it cloud culture. So I wrote my own definition. So it's the organizational behaviors that that enables delivering rapidly and in excellent quality while maintaining happy employees. Now, I kind of feel a bit afraid to say happy employees after the keynote, but just to make a statement, being happy, our employees being happy is not an objective. It's a measure to get something, okay? If we get our people to be happy and engaged, that means they would be good employees and they will provide value to the company, okay? So it's a win-win thing. So what is my secret sauce? So first of all, we need to take a look at our organizational setup to make sure that we are set up the right way to enable people to work properly. Then we need to dive into technical infrastructure. So if we want to ask them to do something, they really actually need a way to do it. And last but not least, of course, is processes and practices. Otherwise, I will be out of a job. Okay, so first, Conway's Law. Any organization that designs a system will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization communication structure. Okay? So my observation of this is that if you have an organization that is built in components, okay, that means you have architectural layering being mirrored by the organization. That means you're going to be delivering architecture layers. You're not going to be delivering products or features. Okay? So the way we went for it, sorry, wrong way. So what we did, the first thing we did 2 years ago when we set up the organization is to discuss how do we want our teams to be set up. So I'm not going to talk about hierarchies, because hierarchy, well, I do work at an enterprise, okay? It's not going to be an holacracy anytime soon. But what I can control is how my teams are set up, okay? And the first thing we did was we actually had a big meeting for all the leadership team, management, from engineering, from product, from architects, and so on, to discuss how we want this, this organization to look like. And when you look on the feature team definition by, specifically here by Les, okay, it was just easier for me to relate to that, is that a feature team is a cross-functional, cross-component team that completes many end-to-end customer features one by one, okay? So what we did is actually we created feature teams. But semantics matter, because my feature team is not your feature team, and it's not your feature team, because my product is different, my people are different, the skills are different, the architecture is different, okay? So semantics matter. If you want to be, they laughed in the previous session about being pragmatic, but this is actually being pragmatic, that you need to be able to define feature teams for yourself. And components are not the enemy. For example, for us in our evolution, we have feature teams, but we still have platform feature teams. So they do have platform features, okay? And there is interaction between teams, and there is still dependency between teams. You cannot solve it. It's complexity. But you can try to make it just complicated for some of the things, okay? And what we use to do that is by using feature mapping. Now, feature mapping, we actually use user story mapping. Do you know that? Okay, so basically we did a user story mapping, and then we based our feature maps on it. And feature map says that it's like we draw a brain map, you know, just like, okay, this is our product, and this is this feature, this functionality, this functionality. And then we aligned on which features are relevant for each team, okay, according to the skills, according to the product skills, and so on. And then you can visualize who owns what, okay? And people actually have ownership on something that they relate to. The other thing is, since it is not perfect, you need rules of engagement. So we have something called inner source. So it's like, it's not open source, but rather inner source. So if you write something and you need something to be developed in another feature team's area, you can contribute your code there, okay? But then you need some rules of engagement. What does it mean? How would you accept my code? So sometimes you have, it's like explicit rules of engagement. So you have to do a code review, okay? The other team needs to do a code review before I can push it, okay? But none of the things I'm going to say today is new or innovative. It's just about focus and attention and management attention, because people, when they are on their autopilot, they forget. Okay, so we want to make sure that when we have interaction between teams, they know how to collaborate between themselves. And you don't have to be there all the time to be the judge or to be the moderator. Other thing that we found out was that groups need to have identity. So for me, a group is 2 to 3 teams that have the same manager. Okay, but since we have feature teams, what does it mean? What is their identity within the bigger organization? So the bigger organization is a 120 people, it's like a tribe. And the groups are like extended families. Okay, so you have the team, which is your family, and then you have the group, which is like the extended family. But you need to have some identity to that family because it's not like real family, you know, you have some context within. So what we found is that if you have a specific area in the product or a specific delivery ownership that this area has, then it gives them identity. And when you ask them, who is your group, they would usually go as up to their direct manager and not above. When we did change management for feature teams, well, we really preliminary decided on feature teams, but we kind of weren't sure on how to communicate that, and we kind of told them, okay, you're going to be feature teams now. Surprisingly, it didn't work. And only after a couple of months, we understood that, okay, for us, we're already feature teams, you know, management, we're sure we're feature teams, and then we look at the teams like, they're not there. They're not thinking the same. They're still resisting. Why are they resisting? It's so sensible to do that, okay? So we did a rollout process, which is kind of sounds harsh and not agile, but actually it's about how do you communicate? What do you communicate? You communicate in the head of engineering level, and then the managers have some communication kit they can discuss their teams with, and then the Scrum Masters are the change agents within the teams. Okay, so you really need to think it through, okay? It's not like Eisenhower used to say, it's not about the plan, it's about the planning, okay? So also in organization, you need to do a lot of planning, and you need to have a lot of intent. What feature teams gave us was stability. So if we have stable teams and we change product strategy, okay, we started as a UI-only web IDE, and today we are a platform for many things. Besides our 10 teams working on the product, we have dozens of other teams contributing to this product, okay? So having team stability on features helped us because you can deprecate a feature or area in a product and then give them another feature area. They still have ownership. It's still full. It's whole. It's not something you need to get people, okay, now I need this number of UI developers, this number of server developers. Okay, they are a working team. And what we found was very, very helpful is creating T-shaped persons. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. Not everybody are T-shaped person. T-shaped person is someone that has enough knowledge about everything in the team, but still has some speciality. Okay, so it is possible that in a team we will have a really, really good UI developer. But it doesn't mean that every backlog item that requires any UI is waiting for him or any task in UI. Everybody does UI development. But if there is something very, very complex, then he might be taking that task or at least supporting the other person who's taking it. Okay? And we built that during a lot of inspect and adapt. And it's not perfect, and it's not at all teams yet, but we have intent there, okay? And we're working on getting there. Another very important point is nothing comes for free. Shockingly, even investing time of people in just people development, you need to invest time. That means that if we want people to do more, to know more, we actually need to give them the time to do that. And a lot of product discussions on where you invest your time. Can we do another feature, or can we do other things that will help us build a better organization? Okay, and this is where head of engineering and the chief product owner need to have alignment, and we need to have discussions on these priorities across the entire organization. Now we're working on end-to-end responsibility. So we're trying to get the teams to understand that they're mastering their features, and they also need to give support, of course, because we don't have any external support besides the teams. And eventually they will be able to push the button, which is continuous delivery or continuous deployment. So once you have established all the previous criteria, then you can be starting to talk about end-to-end responsibility. If you wouldn't have done all the things before, it will be very hard to demand from people to take end-to-end responsibility. Okay? And all of that, I mean, the organization is 2 years old, and we are still working on it, and it's not going to end soon. Okay? It's not a plug and play. It's a hard work by management all the time. So technical infrastructure. Now, I'm not a technical person, so I'm just going to talk about the concepts and the mindset behind that. Architecture. Architecture needs to support scale. When you work on the cloud and you have to deliver constantly, there is a tendency, I don't know why, to do it quick and dirty. Now, architects, I love them, really. They're great. But they like things very, very tidy. And if you can prepare something that will later be working really nicely, but that later will come 3 years from now, that doesn't work. And then you have collisions between the architects and the developers, and not to mention the product, who isn't just waiting for the product to get out. Why isn't it out yet? Okay? So you need also to work with the architects on how this can be transformed into adaptive design. And where does it make sense to do a framework, and where does it make sense, okay, you know what, let's just do an experiment. Let's just do this validator and that validator, and then if we see that we actually need additional, then we will build a framework. Okay, let's just probe it. Okay, and this is a discussion that needs to be done within the teams all the time. Another journey we are starting to work on is the work from monolith to microservices. Now, Marco here is going to talk about microservices later. So I'm not going to expand about it, but I'm just going to say that you cannot expect people to continuously deliver if everything is a monolith. Okay? It's just like asking them, fake it till you make it. We done that. Doesn't work. Because they can say, okay, you know what? I will work really hard. I will slice my stories really short. I will integrate every day, and then what? Nothing happens. Why should I work if everything anyway is being delivered every 2 weeks? So it doesn't make sense. Okay, so even if you cannot break down the monolith, you have new services you're developing now, do them apart. Explore if it's possible to take one of them, to package it separately as a feature and release it. So it's about the mindset. It's not about the technical issues. We have technical discussions with the architects on how to do it, what are the prerequisites to do it, and so on. But, you know, like kind of pushing it uphill now to make sure that we will get there one day. Okay? It's a journey. DevOps. So again, Gil did a really good session yesterday talking about DevOps, and I have a confession to make. We have a DevOps team. I know. It's hard, but we do. And we do it for a reason, because DevOps doesn't come for free. It's not like one day you're going to say, oh, you know what, guys, we need to do DevOps. Okay, all the teams now know how to build Jenkins and build a CI and run it across 10 teams. Yeah, that works great. So we do have a DevOps team, but we also work a lot on communicating what does the DevOps team objectives is. And the objective is to build the tools and to be an enabler. It's not about pushing the team's code into the release branch. Okay? So there is a lot of tooling, especially when establishing a new DevOps. Okay? A lot of tooling going on, a lot of infrastructure to be built, and a lot of education to be done. And this is what the DevOps team does. We could have had 30 people in the DevOps team. Okay? We have 9, I think, 7. Okay, we could have 30, and they will all be busy. Okay, it's like something you can always have more. It's like a good platform. Okay, but you have to stop at a certain point. And another observation I have, and I'm not going to go into quality assurance people. I apologize in advance, but as long as you have a quality assurance person or a DevOps person in the room, in the team, the other team members will not do that job. It's just the way it is. Okay, as long as there is someone that will catch that ball if it falls, then it's like just like kids. Okay, if you don't let them go at least, then it will never happen. So manage the system. The DevOps team needs to manage the system, not the actual releases. As any good organization, when we started out, we looked at the Spotify model. And what resonated with us was release is not a drama. And for us, 2 years ago, release was a drama. We had like we had a 4-week sprint, and at the end of every sprint, we had to integrate for the first week of the next sprint. And that doesn't work. It's definitely not in the cloud. So what we did was actually we invested a lot of time in automation. And back then, the product said, oh, we can't afford doing all that automation. It will cost so much time, and we need to release features. But we said, okay, but if you spend 1 week out of 4 every time on integrating that, it's a week where we don't create new features. It's the same cost, it's just different timing. And also we had a lot of change management doing within the teams. So what we did, we gathered the Scrum Masters, and we told them, guys, it's very painful for you. You do a planning, and then you put that planning aside. You do a 1-week integration, and then you go back to your sprint, work for 3 weeks, and then you do the same. So it doesn't make sense. So they decided they will actually do the dev close on the 4th week of the sprint. But some of them said, but you're cutting short our sprint from 4 weeks to 3. It's like, yeah, but you're doing it anyway. It just depends when you're paying it. So we got over that, and we started with automation. It was very hard. People didn't like to automate them. And come on, guys, we're here to code. We're not here to test. But they started automating, and we started from new features. We started out where it is cheap. New functionality first. Okay, and then each team had identified and mapped all the legacy code that needs to be automated. And then one by one, every sprint, just a bit, okay, but concrete plan. Okay, it's not like, we want to get to 70% coverage. Okay, go ahead. No, the managers sat with their teams and had a concrete plan on what is the prioritized test to be automated. Of course, we started with unit test automation, integration automation, Selenium automations, okay, all the full stack. And I will not lie to you, we are not 100% automated, okay? But still, our automation feels safe, okay? We rely on it now. The next step was to create a CI, okay? So now we have a CI that is running through the outputs of the entire development teams. And when it breaks, we get an email notification. And if it breaks 3 times in a row, it runs like every hour, I think, something like that. Then we have a dev close. We have a code freeze, sorry. Okay, so it's not a very agile thing to do in the mindset to say people, no, it's not nice. You've been breaking the code, you need to go. But sometimes you need to create the boundaries for the teams to be able to work within it. Okay? You cannot expect people to have a green CI all the time from day one. Okay? You need to create a structure to enable them to understand what are the rules. I'm not going to go into feature flags, reverts. All of these are investments we need to do in engineering. It has no business value, but of course it has business value. If you introduce a new feature and it has a major bug in it, you want to be able to revert it. It doesn't come for free. Okay, you need to think about it. You need to plan for it. You need the mindset for it. Okay, so this is part of educating people on their professionalism, on their craftsmanship. And it takes time and it takes resources. Usage and monitoring is about how do we as an organization monitor that actually our features are being used. And I will not stay on that too much, but I would like to say that what we're trying to do now is if I go back to the ownership part, we are trying to get the teams to define what they would like to monitor about their features. So we're not going to tell you what you need to monitor. You tell us. What do you think we need to monitor? What would you like to know? What are your questions? Okay, because if they ask the question, they own it. Okay, so again, this is about mindset. And now, continuous delivery and deployment. I know it's not the same, delivery and deployment, okay? But this is the final frontier for us. I mean, when you talk about cloud culture, you want to be able to deploy, I don't know, 100 times a day, okay? We come from an enterprise and we work mostly for enterprise solutions. So our customers are not looking for everyday change, but still in the mindset, we want to be able the teams will be able to deliver independently. Independent from the sprint, independent from other teams. Okay, and all what I've said till now is an enabler for that. And still here, they have a lot of mental work to do. Okay, it doesn't come for free. So we're not there yet. We have 2 teams that are delivering continuously, but we still have a road to go. And last but not least, processes and practices. So we talked a lot about how the organization is structured, and we talked a lot about how technically we are enabling things. But what about the organization processes? So first of all, we have a rhythm. Okay, we have a cadence. This is something I took out of SAFe specifically. I usually work around other frameworks, but here I really like the concept of quarterly planning. So we have a planning every quarter, and it enables us as a big organization, first of all, to look at our longer objectives. We have yearly objectives, okay, and to see, okay, what are the next steps that make sense to go for. And then, according to that, we steer the organization. So sometimes we have something that is more platform-oriented. Sometimes it's more UI-oriented. Maybe we have an event, a specific event that we want to have a specific scenario enhanced, okay? And that gives us the ability to shift priorities and to shift epics and features between teams, okay? So it's a steering event. It's not like we are doing backlogs for teams for the next 6 sprints, okay? The backlog for the teams will be for the next 2-3 sprints, and then you have like epics that they know are coming. Now, what that made us is the sprints remain the organizational heartbeat. I mean, we do check at the end of sprint. Actually, we deliver every sprint, okay? So we do use the sprints, but it's not like the sprints are in charge of the cadence of the organization. And another thing is that we have agile practices beyond development. So for example, our organizational objectives are being managed also on a quarterly basis. So it's not like we're going to say, okay, our organizational objectives here are to learning organization, this is what we'll do for the end of year. No, we have actually a quarterly plan for it, and then we monitor it on a quarterly basis. What I've experienced in some of the teams is what I call Scrum Kanbanization. Okay, so it's not like we're moving to Kanban, but there are some similarities. Okay, so when you have a quarterly planning, you don't necessarily need a very detailed plan, okay, every sprint. So what we've been seeing is that teams have been starting to do continuous planning. That means they take out the first priority items, they start working on them, and once they see they're about to finish, they take the next one. Okay, so they are working on prioritized backlog at all times. The product owner may change any priority in the backlog whenever he or she wants, and then they're just working on the most important item at that moment. Okay, that relieved the teams from a lot of meeting debt, or meeting death, you can also say that, because their planning meetings now, if they exist, are only 1 hour long, okay? The review is actually a review of a feature. Once they finish the backlog item, they just show it to the PO, sometimes even during work, and then they move on for the next. And in every few weeks, they stop, they look at what they've done so far, say, oh, it's very nice, and they move on, okay? So that is changes that we see, and also it separates the delivery from the sprint timelines. So it's a very big relief for the teams because they don't have to estimate to death, okay? They need to give like maybe t-shirt size, or just, you know what, we don't know. We'll just start working on it and we see how we go, and then they communicate with the PO. There are no contracts. I don't even need to say it's not a commitment, it's a forecast, okay? We're beyond that in some teams. And that's very nice because you can afford to have a big item. Sometimes you have like these big features, nobody knows how to break them. And you just say, okay, it's not going to get into this sprint, it goes to that sprint. We had many bad cases of, if we have a 2-week sprint, you're going to deliver at the end of the 2-week sprint, even if it was a 1-day item. Sometimes it's the student syndrome. Okay, and now we don't have that anymore because the sprint is, okay, we cut the master branch at a specific date. Everybody knows that. What's in, what's not is going to be on the next delivery. Go. And you can deliver during You can also submit things during the sprint itself, and it will go out when the sprint ends. It's very nice, and it gives a lot of empowerment and a lot of engagement in the teams. Sorry, another thing is the breaking down stories. So an additional thing is that you need to know how to break down stories. Now, sometimes the product would say, I just want integration. I don't care how you do that. The result should be integration. Like, okay, for example, for us, we have a templates, for example. It's like, we want parity. You know, parity. I want all templates. Okay, all templates are as important. Oh no, this one and this one is more important. Okay, we'll start with that. Okay, so we also need to challenge all the time on, are we really doing the smallest item possible? Okay, can we break it technically, preferably on the value? I mean, I always like to ask the question, okay, if after 1 month of work we'll be cut off and we'll have different priorities, will we have anything working at that point in time? Okay, you need to be directive in there, and that is a lot of mindset. Okay, and a lot of work being invested in by the managers and by myself to work on creating that value. Last but not least, my favorite topic is communication. So I had a very interesting discussion yesterday with Natalie, who is actually doing a workshop now on learning organization, about communication. So communication is something you need to plan. And we've been working really hard on how do you communicate with 120 people across all platforms. And sometimes you need to work on your messaging. What are you trying to say? When you will leave this room today, each and every one of you will take something else. Okay? You have different outputs and different inputs. Okay? If I say the same sentence, you have your own personal maps, mind maps, the way you interpret things. So we have a process, that's not a process, but the way we do it is that we think about our messaging and we repeat the same messages over and over again across different layers. So the head of engineering would say it in one way and their manager would say it in another way. And we will send a newsletter written and we will also have a discussion on it. So we try to communicate as much as we can in ways that people will be as receptive as possible. And we understand that not everybody is as receptive to different methods of communication. Second thing is, inspect and adapt, also for management. We need feedback. Okay? We think we know, but unless we talk with the people and get their actual feedback, be vulnerable and say, okay, no guys, we really need to know what you got out of it. What do you think about what's happening? And you need to show them that their feedback actually matters and we do something about it. So it's not like ventilating. Okay, so for example, we have feedback sessions with for managers with the teams. I do roundtables with people. The HR business partner does roundtable with people. We have Scrum Masters forum where they can directly discuss things with head of engineering. Okay, so we have all kinds of feedback loops to see that we are on track, that we are shifting the mindset. Amplify learning and appreciation. So we said culture is about behaviors. We want to see people are actually doing the right behaviors and then we want to appreciate them for doing that. Okay, so we have also public appreciation, also personal appreciation in the feedback. It's very important to celebrate successes, even small successes. Specifically in cloud, when you deliver all the time mini features, okay, how do you know you've succeeded? I mean, it's not like you have a release every 6 months and you say, oh, let's do a celebration, we released. I mean, sometimes you need to retrospect about it and say, oh, you know what, in the past 6 weeks, we've delivered substantial value. Let's celebrate that. Good for you. Let's hear what the customer has to say about that and let's celebrate what the customer says. Okay. Another thing is that really relates to this morning keynote is about success stories. So people really relate to success stories and the most effective way to deliver messages is actually by storytelling. So we have been practicing storytelling as well. So the managers, are practicing it. When we have events, we have people, for example, we had a developer that was sent out to an SAP development. We have a tech ed, which is a technology developers event, big one. We have a few of them, and he went there, and he met with this person who is working in another company of our customer, and he said, you know, in your web IDE, you did this feature. I love that feature. I use it every day. And our developer says, you know what? I built it. That is so cool. Okay, you cannot. It's like priceless having this kind of stories to boost the engagement and to boost the culture. Okay, so I'm like, define myself as a story collector. I look for stories. Okay, I try to find them in order to transform them. So these were my secret ingredients for culture defining steps. We're still on the journey. We haven't finished. It's going to be a long one, and we're enjoying it. How hard it is, every moment of it. Thank you very much. Questions?
Okay. Thanks for vibrant presentation, Naama. But you have already answered my question, but I would like to know if are there more recommendations about how to not let teams deteriorate to fall into specification. Because if you take 5 people, even T-shaped, and then you run the development process as it was, as it is, so probably there will be specifications. So somehow you need to encourage people to stay T-shaped. How?
What do you mean specification?
Specification, no one will lean towards exclusively UI tasks, toward backend tasks, DBA tasks.
So the way we did this in some of our teams is it's actually some of us went to an event where one of the Facebook managers shared that what they do is that they have a bug dispatcher. So every sprint you have a person who's in charge of solving all the bugs for the team. But he's not just dispatching the bugs, he's actually solving them. So he should be able to solve around 70% of the bugs himself. That makes him acquainted with all the code that is owned by the team, not just what he developed. And that actually creates more knowledge also in technologies and also in the product itself. And we've been doing that in 2 teams for now, and it's really been proving itself. So this is just one method to do that.
Okay.
A question about the last point of your session. You called yourself, if I'm right, the story collector. Yeah? How this process takes place? So you are some kind of facilitator of this knowledge sharing. How you unite people and make them tell the stories to each other, when and how.
Yeah. Okay. This is another lecture, maybe next year. But my role in the organization, I'm in charge of the learning organization. I'm a lean and agile mentor. So this is what I do. I just walk around in the meetings and events, and I keep my eyes and ears open. And when I find an opportunity, I grab that person. That is one part of the answer. And the other one is we are actually working on creating communication platforms. So we have all hands meetings, like the entire organization is meeting every quarter. And we have planning events, and we have group meetings, and we have a coffee corner every 2 weeks. The head of engineering is just like in a coffee corner, is just updating stuff. So then we have a newsletter. So we are trying to create many communication channels. And my role is to find the stories to share and to convince people actually to share it, which is also an issue because people really like to hear stuff, but they don't really like to share their own stories because they think it's small, who would care? But you do care. So this is like on one leg, as we say. You need to have someone or people that are conscious about it and are looking for it. Because as Dave Snowden said today, you don't see what you don't look for. So you need to look for it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. If you have these problems, it would be nice to know your answer. We are moving from component teams to feature teams. We are saying, yeah, that will help us with the ownership. The developers say, what ownership? We own our component. That's ownership. When you're talking about owning a feature, what does it mean? Do you have an answer, kind of, something?
Yeah, well, yeah, you need to be very, as I said, you need to be very clear on what does the feature stand for, and you can do that with them. You can do the feature definition with them, and component ownership on when you support things, eventually everything is mapped to components. So it is true that the teams have also component ownership, but it doesn't mean they're the only one touching that component. This is the short answer. Yeah. So I have time. One last question. One. Okay.
About the importance of feedback. I'm a product owner and I want to collect the feedback from the teams that I'm working with. And maybe you will advise some techniques or something unique, something special regarding it, except speaking with them, because probably sometimes they will not tell because they're tired or don't want or something like this. How to, or they don't want to tell it face to face, I don't know. How not to allow them to like evaluate you, but to give you the real.
Yeah. So you can use online surveys. Like you can send everybody a survey just to say what they think. It really depends on what type of questions. If it's product questions, if it's process questions. So maybe we can take that offline because I need to understand. Thank you very much, you guys.